continue those conversations after church or at breakfast some Sunday. But I just think that it speaks to how rich a community this is. I think it speaks to what this church means, has meant to our families, to Chinatown. And yeah, there's just a lot of history here, a lot of stories here. And I think it's so powerful that we get to, like people like me, get to know everyone across the generational spectrum because there's a lot of wisdom. And I feel like, especially for folks from the 1120, we have a lot to learn, and I would love to hear your guys' stories. And I hope that having joint services and more space for us to connect can be a way that we can share that wisdom and stories. And I think we want to share some wisdom too, you know? We have some of that, or at least a fresh perspective. So, but grateful, at the end of the day, I guess what I mean to say is I'm grateful for your partnership, for your relationship, that you have been family to me and supported me financially in prayer, all these different ways over the years. Today I'm supposed to be sharing about South Africa. So I guess at the end of November last year, I went to South Africa in Cape Town, which already feels like a long time ago. And many of y'all supported me in that, and I wanted to share that with y'all. I'm also going to be sharing a couple other things. I'm going to frame it within this one Bible verse. But one thing I didn't tell a lot of you, especially in the 1120, is that I also went to North Dakota over Veterans Day weekend. And so I'll also be sharing a little bit about that. The reason I didn't tell y'all is because it could be potentially like politically tricky, but I know it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So today I'm sharing with you after the fact, and I'm sorry if it offends you. Okay, so I'm going to read a passage from John 4. John 4 is Jesus and the Samaritan woman, and I'm going to be focusing on one verse, particularly in chapter 4, verse 4. It's not going to be up there, so however you want to listen, if you listen better closing your eyes, or if you want to read along on your phone or your Bible, please do. It is decently long, so I'll try not to read too slow. Okay. Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee, and he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it was that was speaking to you, or saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never go thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not go thirsty or have to come here to draw water." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You're right in saying that, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and is now here, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. This is the word of the Lord. I wanted to focus just on verse 4. Verse 4 goes like this. And he had to pass through Samaria. He had to pass through Samaria. Oh, yeah, that's that. This is a map of ancient Palestine. So the passage says Jesus, in verse 3, he left Judea, and he had to, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee, and he had to pass through Samaria. So here's Judea, here's Galilee, and here's Samaria. Back in the day, in Jesus' day, so I'm pretty sure most of y'all know the kind of historical context of Samaria and everything like this. But what would usually happen is, especially for pious Jews, so people who were ethnically Jewish and religiously Jewish, it was important for them, if they were going to go from Judea to Galilee or to Jerusalem back up here, they would often not go through Samaria, because Samaria was a politically contentious space, and I'll get into that a little bit. So usually what they would do is go from Judea to this place called Perea, up the Jordan, and finally cross back into Galilee. So they would go around Samaria, because Samaria is bad. So some history with Samaria. When the Assyrians, so throughout this book, a lot of the Old Testament and the prophets, and a lot of the Old Testament and history is about the Israelite people, as God's chosen people, being conquered by other nations and other empires. So when the Assyrians particularly and the Babylonians conquered Israel, they brought in Gentiles from other areas to settle in Samaria. And eventually those Gentiles, with their non-Jewish ways, their pagan ways, intermarried with Jews. They developed their own language. They developed this distinct religion that was kind of a combination of Judaism and other pagan rituals. And so they essentially developed their own culture, the Samaritan culture. And there was tension, ethnic tension, religious tension, and the Samaritans even built their own temple, because usually the Jews would worship in Jerusalem in the temple. The Samaritans built their own temple on this mountain called Mount Gerizim. And so when the Samaritan woman says, we worship on this mountain, and you worship in Jerusalem, there's a geographic tension there about where is the right place to worship, and where is God actually honored. Where does God receive his worship from? And so we find in verse 4, it says, Jesus had to pass through Samaria. And I just want to focus on that. He had to pass through when he didn't actually have to pass through. The Bible says that, I imagine Jesus kind of took it upon himself to pass through Samaria, to encounter this Samaritan woman, which in a lot of ways is kind of a double marginalization, which in a lot of ways is the bottom of society, not to mention she's been divorced 5 times. And in that society, only men could divorce. So she's kind of been kicked to the curb 5 times. We don't know what reason for. But she's very kind of she does not belong. She's at the well in the middle of the day, and usually women go to the well in the early morning. And so Jesus had to pass through Samaria. And what this means to me is that Jesus walks right into the middle of conflict. Jesus walks right into the places that most folks, particularly religious folks, want to avoid. And they want to have no part in Samaria and all the political turmoil that it represents, all the history that it represents, all the tension and conflict that it represents. Jesus says he has to go through it. Even though it was stupid for him to go through it, possibly. And even if his disciples, we would later find, think it's a waste of time for Jesus to go through Samaria. And my question for us today is, what is our Samaria, essentially? What are the difficult, scary, and dangerous places that we must pass through in order to experience and embody God's salvation for ourselves and others? What are the difficult, scary, and dangerous places that we must pass through in order to experience and embody God's salvation for ourselves and others? Because there are Samarias everywhere today, places of conflict and tension that we would rather avoid. So on November 8th, Donald Trump was elected president as I was loading up a van to go to Standing Rock, North Dakota. If you don't know what's going on, there is something called the Dakota Access Pipeline that's being built through Native American land in North Dakota. And when I left Labor Day weekend, things were ramping up. And I don't know if you all saw it, if you all are on Facebook or something. In late November, it got to kind of a point of really intense conflict and stuff. So, but yeah, I went to Standing Rock to be with, they call them water protectors, who are trying to defend the land and trying to stop the building of the pipeline. It feels like a weird idea for us. I think it's hard for us to imagine what this might be like, but maybe we can imagine if they tore down our church to build a stadium, or if they kind of got rid of Chinatown to build new apartment buildings or something like that, which is kind of already happening, actually. So this was, so this is Standing Rock. This is just a big camp. They have this one hill called Media Hill. It's the only place in all of Canada that gets cell phone reception. So I snapped this picture and put it up there. So there's thousands of people at Standing Rock, all trying to do what they believe is right, but actually coming up against a lot of violence and police presence, a kind of military presence. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So when I went with my coworker and a handful of folks from the GTU, from Graduate Theological Union, I protested, I guess you could say. So one of the things that we did on the day after I got there, we pretty much blocked a highway. And here's a picture. So there's this lady who somehow just had this camera on her snapping pics throughout the whole thing. It was really weird. So these are the police. So we came and we stood in the middle of a highway. There's about 40 of us, water protectors, and we just kind of stood arm in arm. Some folks from the GTU took some clergy gear, so I was wearing a stole, pretending to be a clergy. Because it provides us some kind of like institutional protection. The police see us and they're like, whoa, they're clergy, we don't want to mess with them. Invoke some sort of curse on us, So I was wearing this stole. Some other people were wearing the collar, even though they weren't ordained. And we're just standing there, blocking this highway, trying to prevent the police from getting to the construction site, because there were another handful of water protectors at the construction site getting in the way of bulldozers and other machinery. And so if we stopped them, if we slowed the police down at a certain time, usually around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, they would call off construction for the day, and the pipeline has to eat about $20 million every day that this happens. So we were trying to slow them down as much as we can. So we got there, 40 of us stood and blocked this highway. One cop car came and then told us to move, and then we didn't, obviously. And then about half an hour later, about 20 cop cars came, and about 50 cops came out, dressed in whatever this is, and started walking towards us. Luckily, they didn't inflict any violence upon us, which they would do the week afterwards when they used the water hose in freezing temperatures and the tear gas and all of that. They just kind of pulled us off one by one, kind of dragged us to the ground and arrested us. One by one, all 40 of us. And then, so let's see what we got here. This is me on the police bus, looking like at the top of my game here. They said don't wear contacts because if they tear gas you, and you take your contact out, you could pull out your cornea. Whatever, me and my glasses, and my hands are cuffed. So this lady who took this picture squeezed her hand out of her handcuffs, out of her. So they're like the riptide ones, she squeezed it out. She has her camera for some reason, snapping pictures super secretively. I also got my hand out of mine, but I didn't have anything to do, so it was just more comfortable to get it out. So yeah, that's me. And then, that's not my jail cell. That's Nelson Mandela's jail cell. So yeah, after this, I spent 6 hours in a holding cell, and then I took a bus for 3 hours, and they put me in jail for the night. Yeah, I know. It was all very strange. And so I spent a night in Barnes County Jail in North Dakota, 3 hours away from Bismarck. On the walls were drawings of swastikas and Klansmen, and I just sat there like, how did this happen? Why am I here? And what of this God, of this Savior who has compelled me to do this? To walk through Samaria because I had to. I felt like I had to. One thing, kind of coming back to this family thing, is that when I was on the van towards our direct action, towards when we blocked the highway, I kept thinking about my family, I kept thinking about my parents, and just thinking like, my parents and my grandparents have worked so hard and done so many things for me for this, all leading up to this moment. And it was a combination of kind of like embarrassment and like sorry mom and dad, y'all did so much for me and now I'm here and I might get arrested. But also kind of this sense of like, yeah, this is the most that I can actually do with what they've given me. Like, this is actually the way that I can be most faithful and best steward of the opportunities and the choices and the privileges that my parents have given me and that God has given me, is actually to fight in the ways that they weren't able to fight because they were too busy, surviving, And I wonder, for those of you here who are parents or who hope to be parents one day, would you let your children pass through Samaria? Would you let your children go to the dangerous places or the places where their bodies might be at risk, or their futures might be at risk? Would you let your children drop out of school if God told them to? Or would you let your kids give away all their money if God told them to? And would you trust them with that? Or are you more focused on protecting them from the dangers and protecting them from all the things that might threaten them or harm them, when actually God might be saying, you have to go through Samaria? And I ask that for myself as well, as I think about my future, as I think about all the ways that I want to live into this American dream, or have nice things, or to have a certain title, or to be known, or loved by people. What if God calls me away from that? Am I willing to do that? What if Samaria to me is like just this obscurity in life that I'm not able to reach the goals that I've set for myself? Am I willing to surrender those things to God? I don't know. But in the ways that I can take steps, not only like going to Standing Rock, which is like, ooh, cool, you went to Standing Rock, you're hardcore, but also in the everyday decisions that I make about how I use my money, how I use my time, the relationships that I build. Am I willing to build a life in Samaria instead of Babylon, or instead of Jerusalem, where things are nice and where people notice you? Like, what if God tells me to settle down in Samaria? That would suck. Am I willing to do that? Are y'all willing to do that? Are y'all willing to let your kids do that? Big questions. 2 weeks after Standing Rock, so I got bailed out, thank the Lord. And my parents, kind of helped me come back home. Yeah, thank goodness I did not get hurt. Thank goodness I didn't have to stay in jail longer. And hopefully I will not have to in the future. 2 weeks after I got back from Standing Rock, I went to South Africa. And what a beautiful kind of confluence of events for me, to have one thing go in hand in terms of like how I was imagining Jesus, kind of really challenging what I believed about the gospel, what I believed about what it means to kind of fight for good, fight for justice and righteousness in the world. So I went to South Africa. It's hard to kind of summarize my time in South Africa because all we really did was like visit different organizations and ministries and see what they were doing. So this wasn't a mission trip. I didn't convert anyone. I didn't build a well. In fact, I would say, if anything, I was more converted than anything else. And really, what the most important thing cool thing about South Africa was the relationships that I built and the conversations that we had as we were kind of engaging with different things that we saw in South Africa. And there's a crazy political movement going on over there too. If y'all don't know, South Africans, kind of indigenous South Africans, namely black South Africans, are holding protests, and it's called Fees Must Fall, and they're holding protests at universities because there's unfair kind of fee cost of tuition there's a difference between black and white students, and so they're really fighting for they're calling it decolonizing their education, really fighting for freedom ultimately, and so that was an interesting time to step into Cape Town, into South Africa, as all of this was going on. A couple things I want to highlight. So, of course, here are some pictures. Of course, y'all want to see some pictures. I definitely don't want that picture there anymore. So this is, if y'all can see, so we went to Robben Island. Robben Island is where Nelson Mandela, during apartheid is when there's this really small group of European men who had all the political and economic power, and apartheid is they really segregated everything off into, there are three categories, were white, black, and colored. And so during apartheid, Nelson Mandela was detained in Robben Island, which is an island off the coast of Cape Town. And so this is his cell. You can't really see it. It's about maybe 8 by 6 or something like that. You got the sink, the mat to sleep on. What they would say was during the winter, it would drop down to freezing temperatures, and they would just shiver there without any blankets. And they would have to go into the fields and mine limestone. And some people died because they were inhaling so much junk from mining. But Nelson Mandela was there for 30-something years in this prison. It was interesting because there were actually some folks who we met who didn't like Nelson Mandela, which complicates things, but I think it also speaks to kind of the complexity of what we mean when we, not only when we pursue freedom on a political sense, but when we think about what the gospel means in the world. So Nelson Mandela is a Christian. There's also a guy named Robert Sobukwe who was also a Christian. They didn't let Robert Sobukwe stay in a cell because his ideas were so dangerous that they had to put him in solitary confinement for over 20 years because they didn't want him talking to anyone, because he would radicalize people in jail, which might start a revolt in jail. So they kept this guy in this little cell all by himself, and he went crazy. So a lot of people said, we don't like Mandela, he was too nice, and he was too moderate, and they like Robert Sobukwe, who was dangerous and revolutionary. All of that created great conversation as we were thinking about what is real freedom for us in America, and what does freedom look like, not only in a spiritual sense, freedom from sin or freedom from bondage in a spiritual sense, but what does it mean for communities to be free? What does it mean for us as a church family like FCBC to see growth together, healing together, and all the wounds that happen from the immigrant experience, or all the wounds that happen as we try to all the wounds that are happening right now in America politically. What does the gospel have to say about that? Are we going to be more Mandela-like? Are we going to be more Sobukwe-like? Are we going to be something in between? What does it mean to be Christ-like in the midst of political turmoil, in the midst of conflict, disagreement, all these things? What I really wanted to focus on was one place that we went to in Cape Town called Fusion Manenberg. So Manenberg is kind of like a ghetto in Cape Town. So it's really poor, it's all black, and there's a lot of drugs, gang violence, and like prostitution and stuff, human trafficking. So Fusion Manenberg is a ministry out there. So this guy right here, we're having a little worship session right here. This guy, his name is Jonathan. And Jonathan kind of is the director of this thing called Fusion Manenberg. He's super cool. Basically, what he said was, he started Fusion Manenberg, and he got like a grant, I guess, or some fundraising. And he really kind of like, his whole vision for what Fusion Manenberg was really kind of shook me. Because we went to some other ministries and they were like very kind of like what you would expect. Like, yeah, we want to really help people, we want to rescue people from poverty, and we're gonna have this program, and it's gonna be like this, and it's a 6-month program. You check this, you check this, you check this. And first thing Jonathan said is, he said, the first 3 years that I was director for Fusion Manenberg, all I did was sit on the corner and get to know people. For 3 years. He's like, I got paid to do that. Sit on a corner and talk to people. And then he said this thing to me that kind of like hasn't left me since. And he said, this is what Jesus did. He said, for Jesus, it's all about relationships. We don't measure our effectiveness the same way that the world measures our effectiveness. And he said, love is a waste of time. That's what stuck with me. Love is a waste of time. Love is sitting there on the corner for 3 years doing nothing but building trust. Love is a waste of time. And how for me, that just kind of like pokes at something, my impulse to be efficient, or my impulse to give a report to somebody. Look at all the things that I did. Look at the people that I converted. Look at the things that I built. Look at the houses that we repaired on our mission trip. Look at all these things that we did, because I need you to know that your money, when you supported me, went to something good. It went to something measurable. But that's not how the kingdom of God works. That's not how love works. If love really is a waste of time. And if Jesus really had to pass through Samaria, then that's not what the kingdom of God is about. It's not measurable in the same ways that we count outcomes, or that we count finances, or we count like productivity. And that really has stuck with me. And so I wonder, what are the ways that FCBC can be invited to waste time together? And I wonder if we are even capable of that. If we're capable of wasting time together, if we're capable of traveling through Samaria together, because it's really tricky, especially when so much of our Sunday is packed, and so much of our Sunday is committee meetings and other meetings, and making sure this gets taken care of, and making sure this gets to the right person. And I'm not saying any of that is bad. I just think to have a mentality change, for us to kind of think about what would it look like to waste time together, to really love each other, to really step into places that are uncomfortable, that we can't measure how effective we are. If all we did for the next hour, instead of having service, or instead of having a membership meeting, is we just sat down and talked, or got to know each other, or tried somehow to bless one another, or to hug each other, or something, which feels like a waste of time. Because there's business to take care of, there's things to vote on, and whatever, More specifically, that's one thing. The other thing, I guess, for us, that I've been wrestling with a lot, is wondering, given the kind of wasting time, given the idea of having to go through Samaria, is what role is FCBC going to play in our lives and in the lives of our community for the next 4 years? Because as many of y'all know, yesterday Trump signed an executive order to ban Muslims or refugees from entering the country, and that is not okay. And I think the church, in fact, I think this book has a lot to say about that. Namely, if you kind of peruse through Leviticus or Deuteronomy, you'll see a kind of constant reminder of God saying, welcome the stranger because you were once strangers in the land of Egypt. And And yet here we are turning away people at the airport because they come from certain countries, because we're afraid, because we don't want to pass through Samaria. And especially even as Trump has signed the executive order to continue construction on the pipeline, people are going back to North Dakota. There's just a lot going on. And I think, I'm not going to tell anyone what exactly to believe about it, but I think there are ways that the gospel speaks to this. I think what we see in Jesus is that he engaged with these issues, even political issues. Everything Jesus did, so much of what Jesus did was political. Even the fact that he said that his good news, his gospel, was called the kingdom of God, which in very direct confrontation was an affront to the kingdom of Caesar. The kingdom of Rome, the empire of Rome. Even the language that Jesus used was political, because our gospel has to intersect on these issues. But yeah, I think with the refugees, with immigrants, with Standing Rock, I think it's easy for things to feel like they don't have to do with us. But especially as I think about us as a family, as I think about the folks who came to America and came through this church, and I think about the fact that we were founded in 1880, I always come back to this, which was 2 years before the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, when people who looked like us were not allowed to immigrate into this country. This just feels so relevant. And not only that, I feel like FCBC has something really valuable to offer to this conversation. I feel like the church has something really valuable to offer this conversation because it's part of our story. And it informs so much of what we do today. It informs so much of what our church means in Chinatown. But I get it. It is really easy to feel like these things don't affect us. And so we keep on going with our programming and our meetings and our committees. And we have the great privilege of ignoring everything that's going on. But that's not what I see in Jesus. What I see in Jesus is someone who had to go through Samaria, even though he didn't actually have to. And this Jesus spent a lot of time with lepers and tax collectors and paralytics and sinners, and he chose to spend all of his time around those society has cast aside. These people, people like immigrants, refugees, people of color, poor folks, homeless folks, the world will always tell us that these people are a waste of time, and that these issues are a waste of our time. But I think we are invited to waste our time. I think we are invited to love people in ways that are wasteful and extravagant and nonsensical and impractical. I believe that that is the kind of love that Jesus shows us. So I wanted to leave us with some practical steps. Here are some ways to waste some time and money. There are ways that you can donate. The Water Protector Legal Collective is giving donations, partly for situations like mine where I had to be bailed out. It cost $500 to bail me out, and thank goodness for donations going to the legal fund at Standing Rock. They were able to get me out. More legal fees and lawyers and all that stuff are forthcoming, so that's what those donations are going for. The ACLU intervened yesterday with Trump's ban on refugees. You can also donate to the International Refugee Assistance Project. They're also doing a lot of advocacy and legal work for refugees. You can call our senators. Oh, I forgot to put the phone numbers. You can call our senators and you can just Google their phone number. And really, you can call them whatever issue is pressing for you. I'm not going to tell you what issue to call them about, but if you say, hey, it's really important to me that you vote a certain way or that you act a certain way in relation to Standing Rock or in relation to immigration or in relation to refugee stuff, you can call your senator and put it on their agenda. So that's how it works. They get a certain number of calls and then they put it on their agenda. Educate yourself on an issue. Watch a documentary. Read some articles. Talk to somebody about it. Call up a lawyer friend. Talk to me. I don't have all the expertise on everything, but there are ways that you can know what's going on, that you can choose to not be politically apathetic. Read stuff from both sides, get an informed picture. And finally, and I really don't want this to be the cop-out one, pray to be confronted anew by Jesus. And I really do mean this. That in my experience, I have met many different Jesuses. I have met Jesuses that are very comforting and nice. I think that's still a real Jesus. I've met Jesuses that are angry and shaming. I'm not a big fan of that Jesus. But then I think today, especially in this passage, I'm confronted by Jesus who walks and invites, but who steps into dangerous places. And Jesus who actually challenges our ideas of what is safe and normal and good. So I do invite all of us, including myself, to continue being confronted by the Jesus who invites us into the scary places in our lives. It doesn't have to be politically. It could be into scary relationships, scary conversations with our family. It could be scary anything. Interactions with strangers, as long as don't do anything silly. But I think there is a way that Jesus invites us into places that are scary and into places that are difficult. And I think we can pray for that, to be confronted by this Jesus. So, I guess my question for all of us is, where is your Samaria? And how, this week, can you take a step into those places instead of going around? Because I believe that actually, not only is that difficult, but it's actually better. It's actually a fuller life there in Samaria. And we actually see Jesus in new ways that we never have before, and we have to depend on him in ways that we never have had to before. And it makes our faith real, because only when we're scared does faith have to kind of hit the ground in ways that really mean something. And I felt that when I was at Standing Rock. I felt that when I was in South Africa. Faith has to mean something. It has to be real. It has to do with my body and my safety. And I don't typically have to depend on God to preserve my body and to keep me safe in those ways. And so Samaria has a special kind of learning, a special kind of challenge, a special kind of discipleship for us. Let's pray. God, thank you for not being a safe God. Thank you for being, for in many ways threatening the things that we hold on to very tightly. Thank you for being a God who desires our growth, our maturity, our character, and not just our security and safety and comfort. God, would you help us to see you with fresh eyes, with a new spirit? Will we walk with courage, knowing that you will protect us, knowing that you are with us no matter what and no matter where we go, even if you invite us into Samaria? Thank you that we have your example first. God, in all the things that are going on in our world, in our country, in our city, even in our church, would you give us wisdom? Would you give us joy? And would you give us courage to see those things as they truly are? And to see them through kind of kingdom eyes, as you are restoring things, as you are healing people, as you are bringing us towards the creation, the good creation that you have designed us for. God, would you, above all else, continue to be with us? Would your presence be healing? Would your presence be empowering? Would your presence give us hope? We thank you, Lord. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I invite you to stand as we close. At the same time, we sing.